Hi, Eugene. Thanks for coming
Hey,
on to the podcast. This is the Average Joe Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, episode 10, I believe, off the top of my head. Uh, Eugene Tsozik is my guest today. Eugene Tsozik is a BJJ black belt. You were awarded your black belt February 25th, 2021 by Nick Chewy Albin out of Derby City MMA, located at 8021 Dixie Hwy in Louisville, Kentucky. You're a doctor of physical therapy. You are the creator of the Grappling-RX Rehab for BJJ program and the co-host of the Chewjitsu Podcast. Thanks for coming on to the podcast today and speaking to me. I appreciate it.
hey, thanks for having me, Craig. Appreciate it.
So you can tell that we had a pre-recording conversation, which flowed out of my mouth much easier. I'm actually a little bit fanboying today. I really appreciate you coming and being on the podcast. I've actually been listening to your podcast for a long time, and along with Chewy, and it's a great pleasure to be able to sit down and speak to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, man.
Thank you. So you were actually born in Russia,
Yeah.
which is probably a little known fact about you. And you came here in 1989 when you were 6.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in like a mix of Russian and American culture in your household, or?
Yeah. Well, Russian was pretty much all I knew up until, 6 years old. Coming here, I already had, my grandparents had already immigrated 10 years before we did. So it's just kind of, my parents aren't big risk takers, and the fact that, they did this and pretty much uprooted their lives to come to the States, was just for the opportunity of having, living a better life and, exploring, doing things like, what I'm doing today never would have been something that I would have thought of, or training jujitsu, or, just living a life that I feel is, with fulfillment and joy. And, so that's something. It was unique growing up, obviously culturally, different language, different food, different, some differences, in kind of family structure and like home structure, just like, but it was, definitely it's been cool. Cause I have kids and they're first generation, in America. And it's pretty cool to, just to see where I've come from and kind of what I've been able to do. And a lot of that's, thankful to my parents for taking the risk to bring me here. But yeah, it's always a unique, bringing some of my most interesting memories are probably going to school and like having lunches that are completely different, and people are like staring at your food, like, what the hell are you eating? But it was cool. I was always different. I always kind of knew I was a little different, but I think that that wasn't. I think now I feel that it was very much an advantage and a great thing, as opposed to always wanting to blend into everybody when I was younger.
Right. Cool. Do you still speak Russian with your parents now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We speak Russian, and you'll forget words and stuff, and you'll substitute English when you forget. And my kids, they're 6 and 4, and they speak a little bit, like my parents will speak with them, and it's pretty funny, because they're little sponges. Little kids are sponges at that age, and they can just. And I remember, learning a second language at 6 years old. So it's like you just assimilate it all into who you are, and you just kind of can really transition pretty easily, as opposed to like my parents, who were in their 30s, I think mid to late 30s when they came, and came to the States. So it was like a little harder for them to transition, but for me it wasn't too bad.
Well, I was just going to ask you that, because you're like, I've never learned a second language fluently. I've learned portions of other languages, but never like a full language. Did you feel it was easier to learn English as a second language as a 6-year-old than it would have been as an adult?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, cause I was just so immersed in it. Like there's no other option. Like, it's like you go to school and it's just all you get, you don't get Russian anymore. You get just full on, like, so there's no way around it. You better learn it, and you will, cause you see it, like, and you hear a lot of people when they go and learn a language, they may go do some time in a different country, like they'll go to Spain or something to learn to speak Spanish or something like that. And that, to them, it being immersed in that environment, I think just forces you to adapt and forces you to really assimilate and learn. There's no other options.
Right. I always laugh at when people say like, "Oh, I learned English through watching TV, or I learned a different language through watching these soap operas." I'm like, "How'd you do that? I don't understand how you could do that." I mean, like, I watched like some series on Netflix, like, what was it? Narcos Mexicano. It was really good, awesome series. But I had reading the subtitles, and I'm starting to pick up some stuff. But it was like I couldn't get fluent doing this. There's no way. But whatever.
Yeah. I think like it can be a help. Obviously, like it can be helpful, but like I don't think it'd be pretty tough.
It'd be tough, man. Especially something like Japanese.
Yeah.
So you started jiu-jitsu in about 2008.
Yeah.
Which means that you've been training for about 13 years. And as you said in our pre-recorded discussion, you started at a different gym besides Derby City. And I believe you were a green belt when you came to Derby City. Okay. And I think, and for people who don't know, there are some academies that use a green belt as sort of like an interim belt between white and blue. Yes. So basically you're sort of like, you were a white belt, but you're able to protect yourself, and you can roll live, etc. So was that the situation with the first academy where you had to be a green belt to like roll live or something?
Yeah, well, you could roll. We did some, full rolls, but a lot of it, you did positional work. But it was basically they didn't do stripes at white belt. So everything at white belt, you basically was a green belt, and then you go to blue. And there was a test. There was actually a test for green belt. It was like some basic takedowns, basic submissions, and like it was more kind of, from what I recall, there's some self-defense techniques, incorporated into it. So being a green belt was actually a pretty big step. We had to test for it to get our belt. Myself and Adam, you'll see Adam in some of the videos with Chewy. Me and him kind of started around the same time. We're good buddies from middle school, actually. So we started together, and him doing it with me along the way. We always had that nice competitive drive, and we were both green belts together. And we both went to Chewy's gym after, our gym kind of closed down, and Adam was training a little bit more consistently. He ended up getting his blue belt right before the gym kind of closed and everything. So he showed up as a blue belt. I show up as a green belt at Chewy's gym, and people are like, what the hell is this guy doing with a green belt on? He's not 16. I was probably in my late 20s at the time. And so I did a couple classes, and people were like giving me these weird looks. And then I went up to Chewy. I was like, do you just want me to put my white belt back on? And he's like, yeah, I just throw it back on, just to keep everything consistent. And it was fun for me because I'm at this new gym, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm a white belt, no stripes. It's like no no pressure.
Exactly.
And so people are training with me and think I don't know what I'm doing. And I've got a little bit of technique, so it was kind of a fun way to start at a new gym, I guess. But
yeah, isn't that funny how that, I know one of my major jiu-jitsu goals is to get my black belt, and I'm a purple belt now. And I've had my purple belt probably since February 2019. So we can get into that aspect of belts later. There's something I actually want to ask you about that.
Sure.
But it is interesting how you said about the pressure, where when you're a white belt, there's no pressure. You're not expected to win. You're not expected to really achieve much. But as you go up in the ranks, the pressure comes on more and more. And that's always been an interesting phenomenon to me. Or you change academies or whatever, and then you feel like that extra pressure too to like perform up to your level. Did wearing the green belt when you came in sort of make you feel like that, or were you just comfortable just going
I didn't know what to expect, man. We were just going to, our gym closed, and there was probably a couple of, I don't know if it was about a month that we were kind of like looking at gyms and just trying to figure out what we were going to do. And we thought about like, maybe we might just be done. You're at a white belt level. You're still kind of, you've done a little bit, we've had trained for about 2 years or maybe a little less than that, but we had already kind of like, we had a taste, but we weren't still like so immersed in it that I think we kind of thought about walking away. And then Adam found Chewy's gym. He's like, I'm gonna go check it out if you want to go. And we stuck around, and they were really, the owner at the time, was like, hey, I'd love to have you guys, I'll cut you a good deal and just come on over and train. And me and Adam and a couple other guys, Rich, who is actually one of the guys I trained with, and who really was a big inspiration to my jiu-jitsu because he has similar style. We all went over together, and that was kind of, everybody's just super welcoming. It was a tough gym. It was a bigger gym. There's a lot more people there. But it was it was a great experience, and they were all happy to have us. And it was actually a gym that Chewy had started with as well.
Oh,
Chewy
really?
was gone by the time we got there.
Uh-huh.
We were at Highlander. It's called Highlander MMA.
Uh-huh.
Chewy had started his training there, and then he went on to Derby City.
Mhm.
And so we kind of missed. We didn't train with him at the same time. We kind of knew who Chewy was though.
Mhm.
And so it was they were really welcoming, and it was just a great fit for us, even though it's kind of across town. It was a great fit,
Right.
and we just stuck around.
Right. And I noticed that both of those gyms you were at were MMA gyms also. Is that more prevalent in your area of the country, where there's more MMA instead of just opposed to pure jiu-jitsu academies?
Well, I think the gym that I started at was more MMA, and the reason why I kind of chose that gym, I had a buddy that wrestled in high school that said he had done some coaching out there, but also I went to some local MMA shows, and all the dudes from the gym were just wrecking everybody. And I was
Right.
like, these guys are awesome. I'm gonna go like see what they're all about. And so that's kind of when I started. The premise of that gym was probably more MMA oriented, but Chewy's gym, Derby City, and it's called Derby City MMA, but I think we do have a fight team, obviously, but I think the biggest portion of the gym is jiu-jitsu for sure. I mean, there's weightlifting, there's boxing, kickboxing, there's MMA. And we do have a team, and it's kind of actually starting to grow again. It's kind of gone in waves, I think, and especially when Chewy was fighting, I think it was a little bit more MMA heavy, just more people training. But I definitely think like we're probably more jiu-jitsu heavy now, but we do have a growing MMA program. That's good.
Did you ever have aspirations to do MMA at any point?
Man, my parents gave me so much shit about doing jiu-jitsu. As a physical therapist, they were like, no, you're going to get yourself hurt. You're not going to be able to work. You're spending all this money going to school. It's like, it's funny. I'm going to school to learn how to help and fix people. And I'm going and learning how to, put people in joint locks and submissions. And it's kind of a funny thing how those kind of correlate. But I never really did. I think there was just the risk versus reward for me was just not there. I kind of wanted to. I think there was always a little bit of inkling. Could I do it? Like could I really do this thing, which is probably the ultimate test, but I had a career by the time, I really was, I was actually started jujitsu while I was in physical therapy school. So my training had always kind of been limited in a way. So it was kind of, I just didn't think I could devote the time and the intensity and just, I didn't think there was just something that, plus I was getting a little older, that time starting MMA at, 29, 30 years old, probably just not the best idea.
Yeah. I had a similar thing. I started jiu-jitsu at 41 or 42, whatever it was. Like I told you before, I started at AKA in San Jose, and my coach there at that time was still fighting professionally. And so I'd see him, he did a couple fights, and I was still, before he retired, while I was starting to train with him. And I got that thing where I was like, man, if I had started this in my early 20s, man, I think I would have tried it. I would have tried MMA. But at that point in my life, it was like, already, like you said, I have a family, an established career. I don't have that much time. I don't have the time to train like that. And I'm 41 years old, and I don't need to go get my head kicked in. So it was it was like one of those things where I was sort of like, yeah, if I was 21 still, I would have tried it. And it probably would have been an awesome test. But yeah, I had that inkling where that urge to want to do it, or I thought it might be fun, to do it. But then I was like, no, it's just not a good idea. So I passed.
Nah, doing jujitsu for me was so outside of the norm of what I normally would do, of what my, I grew up playing soccer and these team sports. So doing jujitsu was just like, it was really, I started out of a curiosity because I loved watching the UFCs as a kid. And so for me, I loved watching. The first UFC was UFC 6, and it was with Oleg Taktarov, and he's the Russian bear. And we're from Russia, and we're like, no, that's Arlovsky.
You're right. My bad.
Taktarov was a Sambo guy, and he was in UFC 6, and he ended up winning UFC 6. And I was like, this is so cool, So we kind of would follow him a little bit. I
remember you talking about, popping in my head now.
Yeah, so it was just kind of fun. Then you go back and you start watching the Hoist Gracie stuff, and you start like, what is this jiu-jitsu thing? And it's just so intriguing to me how it all worked out. And so that was kind of it. I was like, thought it was really cool, and I never envisioned I always felt so much distance between myself and like MMA and these athletes. And I was like, oh, I can maybe do something similar to what they do and learn what they do. And it's effective. And then you have your first day on the mats and you're like, holy shit. All right. This is, there's two types of people, right?
Yeah.
There's the people that have this ego and they're like, well, screw that. I'm not staying away from it. And there's people like, what just happened? I want to learn more.
I have to learn this.
And I was just like, oh, well, I've always been kind of afraid of confrontation. Might not be a bad idea. And then, like I said, Adam jumped in and we kind of were doing it together and learning and we started competing a little bit. And it was a huge test. And I don't know why the hell I did it. I don't know. And I never thought that it would be something I'm like, hey, I'm still going to be doing this thing. And 13 years later at a black belt, earning my black belt, that was never on the radar. I was just doing it to do it. So,
but it's amazing. Like if you look back and like when you started compared to where you are now, as far as I know for myself, your mental toughness is so much greater. That jiu-jitsu, like if you're able to let go of your ego and accept the fact that you're going to get your ass kicked for a couple of years, if not longer, or just forever, actually, it just depends on who you're rolling with. And you can deal with that. That's a great improvement for your personality and how you deal with life. But I also think that it just makes you mentally tougher. It just makes you like when you start, you tap to almost any little thing. And then as you keep going, you're like, no, I'm not tapping to that anymore. I have to get tougher. It makes you tougher. When you get to the point where you're like, you're willing to almost like, not let yourself get broken. You have to be smart. You have to tap and not get injured. Getting injured because you didn't tap is stupid. But it makes you understand that it's not as bad as you think it is, that you can get through a lot more than you think. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, for me, it was a little bit like, as a white belt, you don't know exactly like when you're in a bad spot. So you try to just eat the submission. So I think there was a couple times where I didn't tap where I absolutely should have. And, and you go with people that are more experienced than you are. So they will eventually I think they're not trying to hurt you. But like when I've gotten, I know more now when I'm in a really bad spot, and with the evolution of leg locks, things like that, you have to really be smart about tapping if you want to keep yourself together on the mats.
Yeah.
So I think I've gotten a little bit more, obviously with experience, you get more aware of all right, I'm really, this submission's really sunk in. I think I'm done here. And then also you realize longevity. I'm getting older and I want to keep my body together so I can train at the highest level that I possibly, can maintain.
Absolutely.
Being broken down, that stuff kind of, even though you don't get necessarily hurt, you're getting little chinks in the armor. You're getting, your body does take that cumulative impact and that it can break you down over time.
Yeah. I absolutely believe that. I've experienced that a little bit. I've had my share of injuries, nothing really severe, knock on wood, but and I have some now, that I'm dealing with that have popped up. But so yes, I think that you're right. That I know you're right. That it's not like necessarily. It doesn't have to be a catastrophic injury, but the little things will add up to something, or can you smash up your body
for sure.
Yeah. So, jiu-jitsu was your first martial art, your only martial art that you trained?
So I did Taekwondo for like maybe a year or 6 months, and my parents got me into it, and then like they would never let me take any belt tests. They didn't want to spend money. They was like, "Oh, just go do this." And so I would do the same kata over and over and over, and they never wanted to pay for a belt test because they're kind of expensive. And so like after a while, I just got bored with it. I mean, I was okay, but I started actually I think 6 or 7 years old, and it was all right, but I never really got to really experience it. So it was just never something that I did. I was always more into sports. I mean, I played basketball a lot as a young kid. And well, what do you need? Something that, you got a pair of shoes, you got a ball. I think, it doesn't take a lot of equipment and you can just kind of get after it. So it doesn't cost so much to kind of play in a league every now and again. So I think that was more conducive a way I could spend my time. So that's what I did initially.
Cool. So in what ways has jiu-jitsu improved your life and changed who you are as a person?
Man, I don't know if it's, I think improvement wise, it makes you more resilient. I mean, you have to constantly do something very difficult. Going to the gym, it's always it's going to be a mental and physical battle most of the times. I mean, some days are tougher than others, but you're doing something difficult and you're stressing your body. I think consistently stressing your body makes you more resilient to that. So you can kind of really focus on just keeping some mental toughness. I think things, when they don't go your way, they can kind of, I want to say, you can be more able to deal with them. I think it does make you deal with some difficult things mentally and physically on the mats. You know, if you got a tough opponent, you're tired, and you got a tough training partner, you got a lot of it's mental. Can you really fight through it for, you know, the entire round, things like that? But I think it's definitely made me more resilient, maybe more confident, a little more sure of myself, for sure. I think it can definitely enhance. I think it can make you better. Some, not always the case. There's, you know, as you know, there's some people that use jiu-jitsu to hurt others, and so there's always, you know, it's not always the case, but for me, for sure, it's been something that's built a little bit more of made me a little bit of a stronger person, you know, mentally. I think physically, of course, because of my skill acquisition, but mentally, like, it's made me more resilient, made me able to deal with some difficult things, and doing that consistently is what builds that. Like, you kind of get used to doing difficult things, and that's kind of what's been a really big benefit.
Yeah, I've experienced the same thing. I mean, like I said earlier, it has changed me as a person, I think, for the better. It's made me in a lot of ways calmer. It's made me a lot of ways tougher, like mentally. I think that, you know, the person who started 8 years ago is not the same person who's sitting here today, in a lot of ways. It's been nothing but a positive experience. I mean, yeah, there's been a negative thing here or there, but that's like anything else in life. But overall, it's been an absolute positive experience that, you know, I think is something that will carry me for the rest of my life. But yeah, I wanted to get your input on it, because, like I said before, when I listen to your podcast, you hear it's not specific things, but I just hear things you say and your own experiences where I can relate to a lot of things you've also gone through, or the way you look at jiu-jitsu, or the way you think about it. So, you know, it made sense to me.
Yeah.
So who are your jiu-jitsu inspirations besides Nick?
You know, I think, like, a lot was I talked about a guy, his name is Rich Shabowski, and he's a black belt. He doesn't train with us anymore. He's moved for work and everything. But, you know, I started the same gym as him, and we had a similar build. We both played soccer growing up, and he played a similar. I wanted to emulate his game a lot, and so he was one person for sure. I think I really liked Marcelo Garcia. Was a big one, just because of his demeanor. Like, he's a different build than me, and you know, he's a smaller guy, but his, just like, his approach and his, like, he seemed like a very calm, sound, kind of really focused person. I really enjoyed that. I looked at him a lot. I mean, there were so many. I mean, Hodge or Gracie's another one. You're just like, you know, this guy does very basic jujitsu, but it's the ability of him to perform these techniques are not basic. There's nothing basic about them. They're so precision, and incredibly effective. I mean, you know, when somebody does a technique that you know is going to come, and they do it anyways, that's just like the ultimate thing. So he was really, really interesting. You know, he was phenomenal in the Ghee, which is fun to watch him. I think Marcelo is a big one for me nowadays. You know, you look at, there's so many great athletes out there. You know, you've got a lot of, like, Gary Tonin, and you know, you got John Donaher's a great instructor, and you know, obviously Gordon Ryan's probably the best of all time.
Yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah, you just look at certain things, but, like, think people that inspire me. I really like people that have this a complete approach to jiu-jitsu, you know, physical and mental, and they're just respectful. I think that's a huge thing. But yeah, Chewy's been a big one for sure.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, Rich, and then some of these guys that are kind of out there are kind of like a Hodge or Gracie or a Marcelo Garcia.
You're really in a, you know, you think about it, you're really in a unique situation and in a lucky position to be able to train with Nick all the time. I mean, I would love to be able to train with Nick. Nick's like, go to do a seminar, get up there somehow and train with him for a little bit. He's really good. And he's just, and as a person too, he seems to be a really cool, down to earth person. And that's important to me too. I think that's a trait.
Which sees what you get, man.
Yeah,
he's the same person on the videos, on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Or bullshit and sitting around, the
Mm-hmm.
same person, same silly dude.
Mm-hmm.
He's got his opinions on things, of course, but he's got a good approach. He's got a thought out approach, and I've learned a lot from him as well. So, I mean, of course, you got to say Chewy's been a big inspiration for me as well.
Yeah, he's awesome. I mean, and his jiu-jitsu, like, too, he's got that very, I would call it like it's like solid, but built on a solid basic foundation of jiu-jitsu. It's not like all over the place or a lot of eclectic techniques and stuff. And that actually appeals to me too. I like that. I like just like, it's not that I'm opposed to other things I've seen, like all the lapel work and everything. I think it's important to be exposed to all those things, but they may not necessarily appeal to you or your personality or what you're looking for in your own journey. For me, like, jiu-jitsu to me, or like what interests me is really the martial art of it, and all the things it does for me psychologically and as a person. But I tend to gravitate away from things that I feel are more just competition based specialty type things, like worm guard and things like that. Like, I think they're important to know how to deal with them, because you're going to run into them in the gym or at a competition or whatever, but they're not my main focus. And I like that, like Nick Jiu-Jitsu, just like I said, seems to be based on a very solid foundation of, strong fundamentals, and what works. And of all the belts, when you were coming up, excuse me, up to your black belt, which was the hardest to get through and why? What was the biggest struggle?
Oh, man. I don't know if one was more of a struggle than the other. I think they all had their unique place, the unique experiences. I don't know. I don't really think, I feel like I had a lot of success at purple belt. I really felt most comfortable there. So if I had to answer like which belt I felt just really like I'm solid I really like purple. I think I was competing a little bit more, and I was able to test myself a little more, and I had some success at purple belt. I think they're all unique. I don't know if one was necessarily tougher than the other. I think you just got to a point. I got to a point where I think after purple belt, you're excited to get your blue belt. I mean, it's huge. You're excited. I was really excited to get and I was excited to get my blue belt as well. Blue is big, purple's big. After that, I was like, I wasn't really worried about the belts that much. I really just I'm just going to show up and I'm going to be consistent with training. And that's really it. And I almost felt like I didn't want my brown belt.
No.
I was like, you know what I mean? I was just like, I feel comfortable with purple. I'm okay here. I'm fine here. I feel good. I don't feel, I've accepted the load that, purple belt takes on, and I felt good at purple belt. And a lot of it was just, I feel like my body felt good, and I was competing a little bit more. And I just enjoyed that belt a lot. But I think every single belt has unique challenges for sure. Even getting, some people, if they're really focused on getting a belt, when you get to blue belt, everybody talks about the blue belt-itis and stuff. I think if you're really, really focused on the belt, you're going to realize it's just not.
Oops.
You there?
Yeah, you came back. Sorry about that.
I don't know when it cut out.
You said when you were. You were a blue belt, and then you said the blue belt-itis, but then it was like that it wasn't really such a big deal, I think is what you were going to say, getting your blue belt. There you are. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, so we were talking about blue belt-itis. So,
yeah. I think you hear a lot about a blue belt, but when you're focused on the belts a lot, once you get that belt, it's almost like it's really exciting, but then it can be a little bit of a letdown if that's your big focus. So it's just part of the enjoy the belt. Of course, it's a meaningful thing, and it's an important achievement. But again, don't really use that as your main goal. You use it as just kind of like, it's Chewy and I did a podcast on belts, the importance of the belts. And I think it's just for me, it was a lot of it's just a confirmation, like, hey, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're getting better.
Right.
You know, we're noticing you're getting better. This is your belt. You know, this is that show of that, like, that you're getting that. It's just a little bit of recognition. I think that's the way I see it. Now, as looking back, it was, you know, when I started training, I never thought I was going to get a black belt.
Right.
I was like, I never envisioned a black belt anywhere in my future or as a reality. It really wasn't even on the radar for me. When I started training, we had a black belt instructor for a while, and then he ended up moving, and I was under purple and blue belts, you know, and those guys were like the holy grail. I'm like, oh my God, purple belt, incredible. Right. You know, so I just, it was awesome. It meant a lot. And for me, it was like, oh, this is great. I love this feeling. I want to keep training. I wasn't like, I've got this belt. Now what? You know, the belts weren't as much of I was really excited to get them, but they weren't as much of a concern to me, I think, especially after purple belt. I didn't really care much about the belts. Obviously, getting a black belt's huge and it's important, and it's kind of like a rebirth or restart of your jiu-jitsu in many ways. But you know, the belts were just part of the process for me.
Yeah. There was one thing you said that I wanted to pinpoint on, because I really agreed with it, is that if you focus so much on just getting the belts, once you get them, you have like that, almost like a postpartum moment where you're like, well, now what? You know, I killed myself up to this point to get to this belt. Now I got to do it again, like to get to the next belt. You know, it's like you're thinking about, okay, now for the next 3 years, I got to train this hard again. So yeah, I agree with you on that. And it's and the whole black belt thing too, like that is, like I said earlier, it is a goal of mine to get my black belt in jiu-jitsu. But then at the same time, I have, you know, you have those thoughts creep into your head where you're like, my God, am I going to make it? Am I ever going to be good enough? Am I, you know, those kind of things enter my head, you know, and it's like, that's when I tell myself, you know what, just show up every day, just go train, do the best you can, and just focus on that. Don't worry about the other crap. It'll happen on its own.
It will eventually happen. Like the thing at purple belt, you're kind of at a point where like, all right, now I'm probably not going to quit. Like at purple belt, you're pretty much like the pendulum's kind of swung the other way. It's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to keep showing up. And if you keep showing up, eventually you will get the next belt and the next belt and all that. It's just show up and just keep, you know, like you said, you know, do the best you can. You're not going to have great days every day, but I've always found out, even if I'm a shitty day, if I go to jiu-jitsu, my day's always better, even if it's not the best day on the mats. Or if I have a crappy day and I force myself to go, the day usually ends up being better. You, like we say all the time, even a bad day on the mats is a better day than not being there. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, like injuries, like real injuries that like keep you off the mats for a couple of weeks or whatever, or like the pandemic that kept us off the mats for a year. You know, those things they really make you appreciate even the bad days when you get to go train.
Oh yeah,
you know,
100%.
It's like, you know, I would have done anything during that year for a bad day in jiu-jitsu. You know, yeah, but that was horrible. That was probably, honestly, that was probably the worst part of the pandemic for me. Was you know, just not being able to train. It drove me freaking nuts. You know, it was horrible. You guys are all opened up where you are, right?
We are, yeah. For a while we were closed, and then you know, then we just started. We actually made a 6 a.m. class, a very small group, and we started showing up to the 6 a.m. And that was great just to be back. It's something I still do. I still come and go to the 6 a.m. classes and then do some other classes, but those classes were really important because you saw the same people. You really got to know each other's games. You improved, you got the rounds in, and it's just a way to get back to it. And it was, but we're open and I'm training. You know, people can do as far as, you know, vaccines and all that stuff. Like, I mean, take care of yourself, whatever you feel is the best decision. I'm not going to tell you to do anything. I don't care what you do. Like, just be mindful of your training partners. If you're not feeling well, regardless of what your stance is, you know, and that should be the same regardless. Before the pandemic, it should have been the same thing. Don't go get people sick on the mats, kind of thing. And we don't have to get any more detail than that. It's just, you know, you care about your training partners. You want them to be there and be safe. And you need people to be able to get better at jiu-jitsu. You can't get on as much as we talk about grappling dummies, people, know, it's not the same. It's not the same. I don't care. You got to have a live body to work with. So you got to take care of yourself and your training partners. And so, yeah, we're training, man. And it's been awesome. It's been actually a joy to be back. In some ways, it kind of rejuvenates you. You give it some time, let your body kind of calm down and rest a little bit. And then when you get back to it, man, it just feels good to be back.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, what did you do during the pandemic to keep yourself going as far as jiu-jitsu without being able to train?
So I got a road bike and I used a road bike to get cardio in. Nice. I hate doing cardio, but I had my garage. I've got, squat rack and weights, and I did that. I exercised, and I took the time to create some videos and things, to use that time and Chewy and I still recorded some podcasts during the time. So we were able to kind of like keep that connection going. That was one of the beautiful things about having a podcast, is we were still able to connect with each other in the jiu-jitsu community. And I think it was a time when people really needed some type of, not only say entertainment, but just some kind of connection to the jiu-jitsu world. And I think it was a really important time for podcasting. But yeah, man, I had weights at home. I did, I did things for cardio. We got outside. Me and my wife would go outside with the kids, and we go throw a football and just do random stuff, just to be, because you felt almost like you're like on an island by yourself. Yeah,
you did.
It's like you're away from everybody, and it's just like, well, it's just us. We're gonna figure it out.
Right.
It's like you feel like you have to go and get like a damn hazmat suit to go to the grocery store.
I just remember the zombies are outside.
Yeah. I remember coming home and like literally like wiping down all the groceries and stuff initially, because you didn't know. You wipe everything down. So literally it was like a whole process, like undress in the take all your clothes off in the garage before you go in the house and all this shit. And I was like, so it was an interesting time to live through. Hopefully we're done living through it, or we will be soon. But it's a unique experience. And I think I got to spend a lot more time with my family, which is beautiful. Not always like it's stressful for sure. It was a stressful time, but once you kind of get used to it, you're like, all right.
Did you have a lot of turmoil in your house during that time?
I got two little kids, and we're potty training one at the time. My wife is she runs a business, she's very, very independent and she's very busy. And, us being home and like have the unsurety of like, hey, look, what's our business going to look like? She's a massage therapist. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to survive, pay our bills? And so, it all added to it. But I think you get your groove if you really care about, the other person. It's going to be rough initially. Because it's just any drastic change or adjustment is going to take time. And then you don't have jiu-jitsu to really take some of that irritation, stress out, or that kind of frustration out. So it was really tough. It was actually a tough time initially, but then, you kind of get used to it. She had some friends that I think went through some divorces and things like that in that time. And you see that it's tough. But
I heard that. I heard there was a lot of divorce. I heard there was a lot of divorce during the pandemic. A lot of people breaking.
You have to look at the other person and be like, could I really be stuck on an island with this person and be happy? Right. And it's tough. Like, because you realize maybe there's certain things you guys don't get along about, and can you work through it? Are you willing to? Do you have the skill set to do it? So
the fortitude.
It was an interesting time, and I think maybe it really woke people up a little bit too.
I never thought, earlier in my life, I never ever thought that I grew up, or I lived through a pandemic, and living through it has been nuts. And you know what, when the thing started, it actually semi-cured me of my hypochondria. I was like pretty solid hypochondriac when this thing started. And it's weird because I do jiu-jitsu. So, that's sort of actually, jiu-jitsu did actually start that, the cure process for me. But then when the pandemic hit, we didn't know what this thing was. And it was like all these things being said about COVID, I was going to kill you. Man, I went to overdrive. It was horrible. I mean, I had moments during the pandemic where I was like, man, I'm going to lose my freaking marbles if I don't figure out what I'm going to do about this, And now I'm like totally different. it's like I've gotten to a point where I think it just wore me out mentally.
Get
I was
tired
just
of
like,
dealing
screw
with
it. I don't care anymore. I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to
Yeah.
deal with this, and it's, I'm not going to listen to media anymore. I'm not going to pay attention to all that crap. If I want to get information, let's go to the CDC website and read about it, but I'm just going to get on with my life. And that's where I'm at now with it,
Yeah.
just
Moving on.
Yeah. Hopefully we're done we've seen the worst of it, and hopefully we can all move on and just get on with our lives and be done with that. Just think of it as a distant memory.
Yep.
No, competition wise, how often did you compete when you're coming up through the ranks? And what's your most memorable competition experience?
I competed a little, obviously when I started in 2008, there wasn't as many competitions around, but I did compete at some local things, some regional type shows or competitions. It depends. I mean, I 3 times a year for it's something like that. Maybe get sometimes more, sometimes a little less. As I got a little older and I had kids and things like that, more responsibilities, harder to get away for a weekend and compete. I had it's funny, like when you have no expectations, like you don't put any pressure on yourself, you do so well. Like one of a fun memory is my first competition at Derby City under Chewy. I was a white belt, and Chewy was still a brown belt, but he had just taken over the reins of being the head coach. There were some black belts that were coached, but they kind of, he was the one that took over. Right. And he talking to him back about it, like he was really nervous about being the coach. But I wasn't, I think I was sick or something. I wasn't feeling well. I didn't get to, I was under a little bit, I started feeling better, but you hadn't been training as well. And I went in and I did pretty well in that one. And then, so that was kind of a fun experience, just not feeling well and then doing well. At purple belt, I had some fun experiences. I have a loop choke that I just kind of developed. And I didn't really know what a loop choke was. I kind of just figured it out on my own, and then I started seeing what it was. Oh, it's got a name and people actually do it. And so I had a purple belt tournament, and it was an IBJJF, and I just hit like loop chokes on everybody, and it was kind of fun. It was good, I was like, oh, this shit is working. It was so funny. I think I hit like 4 loop chokes.
Damn.
Yeah. I think it was 3 or 4. I don't know, but I ended up getting double silver, but it was just fun because then we had this whole experience where I got this really shitty hotel and it was like, I think there was a storm. It was in Charlotte.
Was that where the condoms to use condom was outside?
Yeah. The microtel. And so that was a fun experience too, just giving each other shit. It was just fun. I think at that time, as well, like people started to realize who Chewy was, and so at a tournament we'd be talking, all these people started like surrounding him. It was really funny just to see that and mess with him. All these people are like wanting to talk to him.
A celebrity.
It was just fun, but that was a good time. I haven't competed as much. I haven't competed at all at black belts. That's something I'm looking to do. But anytime you get a win, it's great. It's just fun, and you go out there and you compete. I think the key to competition is just going out there and being consistent and putting yourself out there, and also just not having a ton of expectations. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't base your value of yourself as a human being and also as a jiu-jitsu practitioner on one competition or one loss. It happens. I've had some bad losses and they'll sting, but if you use them to kind of really take a good hard look at yourself and to get better, I think it can be valuable. Losses can be extremely valuable. We had like an in-house tournament, and the guy I was going against, it was a tournament at our gym, but there was people from around the area. It was just hosted at our gym, and this guy like helicopter armbarred me, like loaded me up and armbarred me in like 12 seconds in front of my whole fucking gym. And dude, I couldn't even wear a jiu-jitsu shirt. Like, and it was funny because he had kind of injured his foot in the match before. And so when we were like, he's like kind of hobbling in, and I'm like, hey dude, are you all right? And I didn't have that. Like, I wasn't in the right frame of mind. And he
Right.
just knew he had something for me, and he did.
Right.
So actually the following weekend I went, and there was actually a tournament 2 hours in Indianapolis. The following weekend, I just went and competed again, and I had a good performance. I had a couple wins, and my first match, I got up on 2 points, and I was just like trying not to lose. And then I let go the other matches. But those are some fun experience, man. I think anytime you go and compete, you're with your teammates, and you're just enjoying the experience and doing it together. You know, people are very good competitors now. It's what they do.
Yeah.
So if it's something you do sporadically, you got to, you know, take that into account, that you may not be the best competitor if it's not something you do all the time, because the environment's pretty intense.
Yeah. I mean, you hear, I mean, I've experienced a lot of these things too. You hear, but like how you can perform better in the gym than you do in competition.
Absolutely.
You can build the competition up into something that is bigger than it really is. I've done all those things, and I've had great experiences competing, and I've had really miserable experiences competing, and so, and I think too, well, it's also like the worst thing that's happened to me as far as competition lately is like, I haven't been able to compete as a purple belt yet. I was going to compete right before the shutdown, and then they canceled the tournament. And I wasn't sure I was going to do it at that point either, because, it was like, again, we didn't know what the hell the thing was, or we was freaking out, and then they canceled it. So it sort of took the decision off my shoulders. But even up until then, it was like just trying to get a bracket in my age category. It was like trying to pull teeth. It's like everybody who's my age, pretty much, who's still competing, is probably a brown or black belt. And, so it's harder. So I've got to the point where I'm like, okay, when this stuff dies down a little more, and we all feel a little more comfortable, and I feel like I want to go, I feel comfortable enough to compete again, then I'm probably just going to go down in age and just do it.
Yeah. Why not?
Like, whatever. I compete. I roll against those people anyway, or people even younger. So it's like, who cares? What's the difference? And one thing I did want to ask you too about purple belt competition, like this is just my outward impression, that when I watch or experienced or watched blue belts compete compared to watching purple belts compete, it seems like the purple belts that are way less, there's like a lot less ballistic type movement. Like, you still have like that in the blue belt level, you still have a lot of that spazzy type, try to kill each other type thing. But then you go look at the purple belts, and all of a sudden now it's technical. Now it's not so rushed, but it's technical. You have to be careful, because if you mess up, you're going to get caught and you're going to be tapping.
Yeah.
But it just feels different to me, and I'm actually looking forward to doing that, where it's like, that looks like a lot of fun. Like, I really want to compete in that realm. Was that your experience when you started competing as purple belt?
I think like a purple belt, you've got, as some, and this is kind of what Chewy has mentioned as well, like you've got some techniques that are like almost like brown black belt level. You're not complete.
Right.
In my opinion, I had techniques that were very, very good, and if I could put people in my realm where I needed them, I could probably finish them pretty more than likely than not. But you're not complete yet. You don't have all the elements together. There's some spots where you've got some glaring holes, but there's also some techniques that you're very, very, very good at. And so that's just kind of where it was. But yeah, definitely, I think with every belt level, I think it does depend on the rule set some as well. But it definitely, you'll see that just the fluidity, the technique, the control. Does it mean black belt? I mean, if you're in a Ghee and IBJJF and the black belt, like you got some people that can really hold position really well. They're very controlled, but then you got some people that really like to move around a lot. And I think it does depends, but definitely you got people have more of a game plan, right? Blue belt, you're still kind of figuring it out. Purple belt, you know what you're good at and you know what you're going to go for. So you have more of I think a path to victory. So, and it's fun to watch. Some people you roll with are very good, and not to be in certain positions with them. Even purple belts that are at our gym, very tough.
Yeah. No, I'll find out one day.
Yeah, soon. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I was really frustrating for a while. I was really trying to compete, and I couldn't get a bracket. And it was just like, this is ridiculous. Every time I try to go sign up for a tournament, they're like, nobody in my age division.
Yeah. Well, if you go down in age, I mean, there's no pressure on you at this point. You're going.
That's what I figured.
Guys.
I figured. Yeah,
no pressure.
Yeah, if the old man gets to beat up the young guy, then that's on him. If he doesn't, then so what? And but now I've also gone back up and like weight now from the during the pandemic. I was lifting weights like crazy. That's all I was doing. Like watching instructionals and lifting weights in my garage. And I got one guy back up to basically the middle so I'll be back.
Yeah.
I always competed in the last couple of years, like all through blue belt. I competed in the lightweights, but but I didn't feel very athletic that light. I actually like being a little heavier. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on Ghee versus Nogi Jiu-Jitsu? Do you have a preference? Do you prescribe to the theory that each has its own merits, which complement the other, or do you see them as almost like two different arts?
I think it's all jiu-jitsu. I mean, I think you're taking away material. Obviously, there's unique things to each one. They're both important. For me, someone that's not like distinctively, I mean, I really don't care. I started training in the Ghee. I did less Nogi. I did more Ghee. But you see the popularity in the Ghee now, or I'm sorry, in the Nogi just really skyrocketing. And with the leg lock game, obviously it changes things. It changes the excitement. I think it's there's a lot more movement. There's more activity in Nogi, which I think appeals to a lot of people when they see it. They want to go and participate and do that type of, that's kind of where the money's at too. That's where the big money fights are and things like that. But I think it's all jiu-jitsu. I think you should be skilled at both. If you're a black belt, you should be skilled at both. It's okay to be better at one than the other. That's fine. If you have a preference, that's fine. But they're both important. They both complement each other in different ways. Some you have different grips, some you have no grips. So I like to, if I work certain techniques, I do have specific lapel techniques, but there's also, if I work certain techniques, I focus on what, how can I do this in Ghee and no Ghee? I want to be conducive to both. But here's the caveat to that is if you're a competitor and your emphasis is in the Ghee or no Ghee, I would train that more, obviously. I think they're both helpful, but like, if you're a Gordon Ryan, I mean, you're going to be working whatever leg locks, or if you're doing Nogi, the leg locks being a huge part of the game, you better know that better be a part of your game that's very well implemented. And that's limited in the Ghee. There's certain, obviously you can't do heel hooks and things like that. So they're both very important. I mean, I think like train what you love. If you like doing one, great. If you like doing the other, great. It's really you're doing jiu-jitsu, and that's the point. It's all jiu-jitsu. Different forms, just like different rule sets, like EBI versus Fight to Win or ADCC. It's all jiu-jitsu.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just asked that because I recently changed gyms, and my old gym, I basically just did Ghee for 7 years. I didn't. They had no Ghee, but Nogi's in the evening with work and my family situation. It just wasn't always easy for me to get here. My dog is trying to get me to pet him. That's why.
That's all good.
But so I liked no Ghee, but I hardly ever got a chance to do it. So I did mainly Ghee for 7 years. But now recently at my new gym, it's actually mainly a no Ghee gym. I only train Ghee once a week now on Saturdays. That's and actually really like it. I've been having a great time with it. Starting to learn more about, like you were talking about, the leg lock, game. And I think I grabbed like 3 toe holds yesterday, So, I'm starting to learn more about heel hooks. It's a lot of fun. We had we just had a seminar with Ryan Hall last week.
Oh, it's awesome.
It was awesome. God. And he's like he's like one of my top 3 jiu-jitsu idols. So I was like,
Ryan Hall is a great mind, a unique, very unique, great mind.
Yeah.
I love his approach to jiu-jitsu, and he's awesome. He's one of the guys I love to talk to, just to pick his brain, just because he's so unique, and he's been around forever.
A long time.
He's been a long time, and good MMA fighter too. He just had that loss recently, but man, he was really good, and he is really good. I mean, I'm sure he'll be back, and he's going to be very, very, very skilled, and even better probably.
Yeah. Have you ever had him on your podcast?
We have not.
You got to try.
We'll try.
Man, try. I'm going to try. I know he's probably not going to respond to me, but
hard to get a hold of. But busy guy with an MMA career and jiu-jitsu gym and everything.
Yeah,
so
he's really busy. But I'm going to try. I'm going to ask him. And hopefully one day it'll happen. But you should try. He's really interesting to talk to. It was very. His analogies for the way he sees jiu-jitsu and the way he explains things is really unique, and it's very entertaining. It's really good.
Yeah. That's a big part of it, man. You
Yeah.
you got to connect with the instructor too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an awesome experience. What are your favorite types of training modalities for jiu-jitsu? Like, do you like drilling, flow drilling, situational rolling, or free rolling, and why?
So I've actually a great thing. One of the nice things about the pandemic, we started the 6 a.m. classes, and I coach on Fridays. We alternate. 1 week we do Ghee, 1 week we do Nogi. And I think being a coach has been so great, so learning how to teach others skills. How do I learn? How do I teach people? How do I get them to acquire these skills and use them? So I definitely love to learn a technique. And if I'm running class, we're going to do a technique or a series of techniques. Then we're going to do a positional. We're going to drill them. Then we're going to do positional work. And then we're going to do full rounds. And sometimes I'll tell people, let's start from this position. Like we've been working butterfly. Let's start from butterfly, full rounds. But you got to be able to expose yourself, put yourself into the position without the fear of like getting smashed if you make a mistake. Right. So we'll do shorter rounds. That's the way I feel like for me, it's like I see it, I drill it, I do it in a controlled setting, and then we incorporate it in. So that's kind of the way that I prefer. I think drilling, for some people, they hate it. It's not for them. For me, repetition is key. I've got to do it. I've got to feel it. I've got to use it over and over. That's all I'm going to implement in my game. If I just do it, I learn the technique and then we do full rounds. It's kind of hard to do that because some people will expect you to be in that position, or they're going to watch for that position. They're going to watch for the defense and things like that. So I definitely think that, learning the technique, drilling it, speeding up, start slow and then speeding up make it even like a drill where both people get to interact. Like maybe I do a butterfly position to a sweep, you hip escape, you get back to a butterfly, you sweep, and we just make it a continuous drill. I think that's a great way to keep both people engaged and involved. So just being a coach now, teaching one day or couple days a week has just been extremely valuable to my own understanding and how I've gotten better. Initially it'd be like, I just wanted to overload people with techniques. Now I'm like, I'm keeping it simple. We do, and I'll feel how the class goes too. It's like, are we getting this? Are we getting it down? If we are, let's move on. If not, look, we're going to stay here and we're going to make it ad nauseum to where like you can do this shit in your sleep,
Right. Well, that's a good point too. Like even going back to that seminar, Ryan taught 3 techniques, or actually 3 concepts. We were doing 50-50, and he taught 3 concepts with it. And he did get us some details about applying heel hooks that were excellent, like as far as positioning of the foot in relation to your rib cage and all that.
Absolutely.
But my point is that he didn't overload us. He gave us 3 really strong concepts to deal with, and we've been training those things. And now we're actually starting to feel like we're understanding them and being able to apply them and how they flow into the next one. So they're actually all the same thing. They all flow together, but they were taught as separate implements first. But I agree with you as far as like showing a whole bunch of stuff in a shorter amount of time I don't think it really equates to a whole lot. I've seen people teach. I remember I was at an old gym. I was the uke for somebody giving 2 other people a private lesson one day. And this person went through like basically like a demo of like different stuff to do from side control escapes. And I was watching it going like, if I was teaching, I wouldn't do that. I'd give them like 1 or 2 things and make them work on those things and really get them. Besides teaching them or showing them 20 things and they don't understand anything. They walk out more confused than when they walked in. So I agree with you on that. I think that's really important. And I also feel that, I don't know, do you disagree that I think that it's almost like, well, even a lot of like big BJJ champions will say, I only master maybe 3 to 5 techniques. I know a lot of stuff, but I've only mastered 3 or 5. So do you agree with that? Or do you probably have like a handful of things that you know really well that serve you the most?
Yeah, I think that's where you see in the tournaments, like like we talked about Hodger Gracie. Hodger does close guard, he does basic things from close guard, and he does them very, very well. You talked about Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall's known for his 50-50. That's a huge, and that he's a master at that, and he's very good at many other things. Yeah. He's That's right. I think is that his nickname?
Isn't it that? Was he the first
Might
one to be called a wizard?
I don't know, but that's true, man. He's so good at that. And I think it's important. Yeah, you can know a lot of things. It's important to know a lot of things, maybe know how to defend things, but you should have a game that's really solidified. You know, I guess you can be great at a lot of different techniques, but I think when you see that the highest level practitioners, they've got like a select handful of techniques they're really, really just specialists in, and that's kind of, they build their game around that. You know, how to get into those techniques, you know, how to pull people into it, how to transition into it. It's just, so it's like you may have these techniques and you may have to go from all these different crazy parts of jiu-jitsu, or, you know, how do you get people into that web, into your little web of techniques that you're really good at? That's all it's about, a tournament, right? You may start in a unique position, standing or something, but you want to get them into a certain position, you get a certain entry. So I think, like, I do agree. I think being really, really honed in and solid in a small number of techniques will be very successful, because then people will still have a hard time stopping it. Yeah. Having a knowledge of everything is important. You know, how to, if you're not a leg lock person, no problem, but you should know the basics of leg locks and when you're in a bad spot, when you can escape, and how to defend. You know, it doesn't mean you have to be a leg lock master, but you may have to do that in order so you can implement your game. Right. I mean, and like you touched on too, the defense, I think, is of the two. If you can either do it or defending is more important. Defending keeps you alive. If you can get out of it, that's the most important thing. You know, and even Roger will tell you that too. Like, I remember Roger said that's how he got, in the beginning of his training, how he got so good, is that he focused on defense, and he got his defense to the point that he felt like he could get out of anything. So at that point, he didn't worry about it. Then he started attacking. So, you know, and that's the thing I'm trying to work on now too. And maybe you can give me some advice about it. Maybe you've gone through this, where you have that whole thing of like, you can get to good position, but maybe you hold it a little too long because you're a little worried about, well, if I lose this position, if I just don't open up and go, I'm going to lose position. But you have to get to that point where you just let go of that fear. Just go. If you lose it, so what? Just go. You know, did you go through that? Yeah. I mean, you think about black belt, like, it's funny. I almost felt like I had imposter syndrome. You know, I'm like, am I really a black belt? Like, can I explore and play and do things? And if I get tapped, is it all right? People are going to think I suck. You know, get that at every level. Every, you know, even a blue belt, purple belt. Like, I think you have to just set, you know, your ego aside a little bit and just know that you're playing. I mean, there's a time to try techniques. Obviously, if I'm rolling with a high level brown or a black belt, I'm not going to be playing around because I don't want to get smashed. But like, yeah, I'm going to put myself in some more precarious situations and play it with some of the lower belts, and they might get me, they might catch me and stuff. And that's part of it, but they are giving, you know, I'm going to have better success rate. I'm going to be able to problem solve these techniques. So, you know, it's getting tapped in the gym it's practice, it's play, right? It's different in a tournament. So I think, like, the one thing for me, if I had somebody caught me in something, you have to look at your body of work. I've been training for 12, 13 years, right? This getting caught in one submission is not going to define me, you know. And you have to think about like, man, look at my cumulative effort. I've been here for years. I've been doing this for years. You're going to get caught in things. You're going to have good days, bad days as well. I just think you have to, if you want to get better, you have to put yourself in those situations and just understand that that's a possibility, because you could play a really boring game and probably never get better. Getting, you know, a side control and hold somebody down, never go for any positions or any submissions or advance your, just because you have really good solid side control, right? But you're never gonna get better. Yeah, it's getting there. It's coming across. It was starting to happen yesterday. I was like, just go. So I just went and I had some success. So it's just building on it and making it happen. And then you're like, I'm onto something. Awesome. That was fun. I played. I tried something. It worked. All right. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, I got a little strategy I'm working on, and and based off the Kimura. I like the Kimura. It's I look at it like it's a submission that's also a control position.
100%.
And there's a lot of other stuff it opens up, and other submissions and triangles and arm bars and all kinds of other stuff. So that's where I'm starting to like build my game from there. Once I discovered that a couple of years, it was like right before the pandemic. I was like, oh, I'm really onto something. It was like a light bulb went off. I was like, why didn't I think about this sooner? This thing is like the Kimura's
Yeah, it can open up all these different avenues to different things, right?
Yeah,
it's one position you maybe get really good at or enter into, and then you can take it to all these different places.
And it works from the bottom and the top.
It does. Or and standing.
And standing too, yeah. You're right. Defense, standing too. Yeah. So what's your current training schedule right now? How often do you train per week?
I'm training 2 to 3 days a week. I'll alternate 2 days a week, 1 week and 3 the other. So the key is, and I've done that for a long time just because of my career and kids and family and stuff. And I think you have to train with intention. I'm not saying it shouldn't be fun. It should be fun, and you can play, and I play around from time to time, but I always have, not always, but I try to keep an intention. Like I'm trying to implement I have a certain task or goal when I'm on the mats, like hitting a certain position. So I think when you don't train as frequently, it's important to do things outside of the gym, which could be studying, maybe studying instructionals. It could be keeping your body in good shape. You incorporate lifting or cardiovascular, whatever you do to help supplement your game. And people think a lot of times, athletes that I've worked with that are jiu-jitsu practitioners, they see that as totally separate. And it's actually very much a component to your jiu-jitsu. You don't have a gas tank, man. Your jiu-jitsu is going to suck. It just will. You'll burn out after a minute or two, and then you're going to get smashed. So that's just as important. And as you've gotten older, you don't need as I've been training for longer, I don't need as many reps, and I can actually implement things, by studying a little more easily. I definitely still need to drill. But I think I try to train with more intention as far as goals. And I do keep it fun. It's not very serious. It's not like a damn world title match every time I'm out there. I keep it fun. I try to work, and sometimes I put myself in certain positions, but I think that train with intention. When you're there, be focused on being at the gym and focused on what you're doing. Just because I don't have the luxury of spending hours and hours at the gym. And so I have to make the most of my time.
Yeah. Can you expand on the goals that you use? Like, how do you structure the goals?
Man, it just depends. Like right now I'm kind of going through leg locks and just working leg locks. I'm just looking at entries and can I enter into leg locks when I'm going to Nogi days, a lot of it's just like, if I have a certain position I'm in, where can it go? How can I expand on that position? So it could be just trying to get into entry, may start there. And if I'm successful in the entry, then I'm like, okay, now what am I going to do? If I'm getting really good at the entry into a certain position, then I'll go from there. So sometimes it's just the entry. Once the entry's solid, then I'll work on maybe I'll work on submission or working on control, or maybe working on not getting caught, in certain things. So I think it just depends on what you're working on. Sometimes it's correlated to the structure of the classes, like what they're teaching in class. And then sometimes it's just kind of what my own strategies are, what I feel like work best for my game.
How many, I wanted something else you mentioned about strength training. That's always been a hobby of mine since I was 16, 17 years old. So off and on. How do you incorporate strength training into your jiu-jitsu, and how many days a week do you actually do strength training?
Right now it hasn't been as much, but I try to incorporate like 2 to 3 days if I can. If I can do 3 days a week of strength training, it's good. 2 days will work as well. But I think strength is one of the most important factors in injury prevention or injury reduction. You can't really prevent injury. So I'd say injury reduction. I think it's multifaceted, but I think strength is one of those things. If you're stronger, I think it will really help you fight off some injuries and prevent, the severity of injuries. So I definitely think strength training is important. Deadlifting, squatting, bench press, even rows, some of those bread and butter, like basic powerlifting or even Olympic lifting is, you're getting up there with Olympic lifting and there's a lot more skill, I think, in sequencing involved. Those really take a lot of work, but I think just basic squats, deadlifts, things like that are just building that general strength are very important.
What do you do as far as because I've recently spoken to like Josh Sutledge, who's he's the BJJ strength coach on YouTube, and he trains at a Mark Bell's gym in Sacramento. Mark Bell, I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Bell.
Yeah. Yep.
So what he's a proponent of is the conjugate method, and I have done it for a while now as well. But sometimes I feel like a lot of that really heavy max effort work, I'm not, as I get older, I'm not so sure if it's probably a good idea. Yeah. And so I was wondering, what type of rep range do you prescribe to for yourself? I'm just not as a therapist or whatever, but just, what do you feel
it just depends. I'll vary it up. Sometimes I'll just do 5x5.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing a lot of 5s.
5x5's easy. It's a good way. And I try to find a way that it really fatigues me. And I can also keep proper form. There's not a right way. I mean, you can go off percentages, and you've got strength conditioning coaches that are very specific and they know what works. And you may change that up as you're getting more into closer to a tournament. You may switch that up. But like a basic thing, you can go 5x5 and just work certain techniques and do that for a little bit of time and see if you get stronger, and then vary it up. It could be, instead of doing bench press, you're doing floor press, or you're doing dumbbell press, or changing things up a little bit just to work your body a little bit differently. Sometimes I'll be more into doing some kettlebell work and some more dynamic type strengthening movements, and then sometimes but I think you got to find what works for you. If you're stiff, rigid, you may work more on mobility work as opposed to strength training. You only have a certain amount of time, right? There's only a certain amount of time in that day and in your week what you can do. And you have to kind of be the judge of where you feel like you need the most help.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, is because I know I am one of the biggest violators of that, where I know I should be doing more mobility work. I should be stretching more. I should be doing all those things. But it's I always tend to gravitate toward the things that interest me the most, I would think, like most people,
part of it.
And it's the weightlifting, and, there's jujitsu. And I have recently been like, Craig, you need to stop. You need to reverse what you prioritize even when you're working out. You need to do maybe the major lifts, do those last, do the other stuff first that you need to really work on, like your core, your grip, your other stuff, that your neck work, whatever, your mobility, and then worry about the other, lifting. Do your stretching every day, do your rolling out, your mobility, drink more water, those kind of things. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, just that, because I know that you do some strength training. I wanted to see what your personal thing was. I've been thinking about playing with some a little bit higher reps, but I always feel like the 5 is a really good range. It's I feel like it develops some hypertrophy and strength at the same time, I think, and it's pretty decent. When you do the 5s, do you do when you say 5 for 5, is that 5 sets of your work weight, or is that building up like pyramiding?
It just depends. Sometimes I will do some other things to warm up. Sometimes I'll keep the same. I'll take maybe a couple of sets to get to my working rate. Sometimes I'll keep the same. Sometimes I'll go up. Sometimes I'll go down. More than anything, I'll probably keep it the same 5x5, but sometimes I'll actually go up if it's a little bit lighter weight. I'll play with it. It depends on how I feel too. I don't think there's one way. There's not this is the way to build strength. Everybody's body responds a little differently. I think if you're someone that's not really knowledgeable about weightlifting, 5x5 is an easy one, or even keeping it, 6 to 8 reps, what have you, something like that. I think it's just getting out there and doing it. The thing is that I know you may not enjoy the mobility work and stuff, but if you're going to do nothing, I'd rather you at least lift weights, right? So you got to find that mix as well. If you hate lifting, then let's give you some things that maybe don't take so much mental energy. You don't have to think about as much. All right, I know I'm going to do 5x5 it this way. I'm going to knock it out. And then if I feel good, I may go up a little bit next week or something. It's just something that you got to get out there and do it. It's better to do something than nothing. And I think obviously, what your body needs as well. If you're really getting overpowered, on the mats, and you feel very just not as strong as your training partners. I mean, that may be something. If you're a smaller person, it might be important. But again, that type of strength is helpful. The gym strength or like the weights. But there's also a different strength to the mats. Like some people come in, they look really lanky and out of shape, but man, they're strong on those mats. They can hold position so well. And so those are different. They do help, but one's not necessarily going to correlate to I think more for injury prevention and keeping your body in good shape. Strength training is good. And like when you get older, you may not want to go to those 1 rep max, 2 rep max type things. There's more potential for injury, I feel like, and it's harder on your body. Sometimes the recovery is kind of tough.
Yeah, that's where I was getting to. I guess in my own head, and I'm just sort of verbalizing it today. It was like in the conjugate, they call like a 5 rep or whatever is they call a submaximal. So it's different than a max, the max effort. And that's what I was thinking about. Like, cause I think that's good for, especially for like you said, the injury prevention, et cetera. But it's just too much. I feel like sometimes it takes too much out of my central nervous system, which affects my jiu-jitsu. Like I just the whole overall recovery factor. And as you get older, and I was thinking like the same thing you said too about mat strength and bar and gym strength. It's like you could be really strong in the gym, but it doesn't mean your jiu-jitsu is going to be better. And I have also found that there's not a whole lot of carryover sometimes.
But I think it can help. Being stronger, I never see being stronger as a bad thing.
No,
it's never a bad thing, especially if somebody's at the equal skill level as you, the person that's in better shape, whether it's cardiovascularly or strength wise, that's the person's going to win.
Yes.
So people that say, oh, strength doesn't matter. Yes,
I absolutely think it matters. It absolutely does matter.
It matters a ton.
But I think what I mean is that like by doing
I agree with you.
If I do a 5 rep max, and I work that, it's not as hard on my central nervous system, but I also think I get the same effect, or maybe even a better effect. So
and it's okay to go up to that 1 rep max. You taper, you really work your way up to it, and then you kind of drop down. You can kind of reset. But if you're constantly maxing out, that's tough on your body for sure. It takes a lot of, like you said, you almost feel like you're in I think your brain's like kind of fog. You're in a fog. You feel kind of wore out. Like you feel kind of like things aren't firing. Well, it's just your body just put it all out there. And now if you go do 1 rep max and then go train, you're going to feel like you just can't put it together. Yeah, you can't. And I've experienced that. And I really do enjoy doing 1 rep max type work. Absolutely. I mean, everybody does. It's your ego, like how much can I lift? Yeah, it's fun. And it's fun, but it's the next day I'm like, that's like all jacked up and I can't think. And if you can't think and your central nervous system's messed up, you can't train jiu-jitsu effectively. You just can't. You can't learn. For sure. You can't retain information. Yeah. So I don't know. I just want to bounce it off you and just get your ideas on it. I think you got to just play around, see what works for you, see what feels best for your body. And maybe one thing works better at one time and you switch to something else and you kind of change it up, give your body a little bit, different feels, different looks, and see what feels best to you. Yeah. Do you do like full body or do you split it? I try to split it just for time, so I can give enough reps, so I can work my body enough. Honestly, I think that sometimes I'll do some full body things. So I'm low on time, less rest, more of a dynamic, less weight, but just kind of consistently moving. But I usually split it up. But again, it just depends on what your needs are, what your time you have. If I've got 40 minutes, I'm not gonna be able to do a full body effectively, really get a good push. So I think I'll probably split it up. Sometimes we'll do push days, pull days. Sometimes I'll do upper body, lower body. It just depends on how many days I have and how much time I have. Yeah. And I want to make sure that I said his name right, because I don't think I did. I think I blended 2 different people when I said Josh's last name. So I want to make sure. I'm looking up on Instagram really quick. Is that the guy from Mark Bell's gym?
Yeah. I said it. Yeah, I said it right. Yeah, it's Joshua Shetland. He's actually a really cool guy. I did an interview with him probably about a month ago. He's a really cool guy, really knowledgeable, very what's the word I'm looking for? Accommodating. So, really cool guy. Really knows his stuff. And he's he's a wrestler in a purple belt in BJJ. And
awesome. That's helpful.
Yeah.
And we've got a great, our gym. We're fortunate to have Joe Clark, who's one of our strength conditioning. He's incredible. How much, he's not even human. I'm like, how do you lift this much weight? It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
I've been really tempted to buy that program that Chewy and Joe put out.
I've gone through it. It's not, my numbers went up. Your numbers will go up, just the way it's just, because it's built based on, as long as you're consistent, you do it, you will get stronger.
I think I'm gonna check it out.
It's a good program. You're in an experienced lifter, but I think like someone that, for me, it wasn't that the lifts were, it's just, it took the mental energy out of it. Like as far as like, I'm not saying lifting doesn't take mental energy, but like, I didn't have to think about what I was going to do. It was already preset for me. I was like, I already know the sequence. I already know what I'm going to do, what day, how much I have to do. And that's what was helpful for me. I didn't have to like really think about, all right, what am I lifting today? What are my reps? What are my weight?
And it takes all the guesswork out of it. And that's what I find
nice.
too. And that's what I find too with the conjugate is that, how you're supposed to, well, depending on your experience, how often you rotate exercises, but it's that too. It's like, how often do I rotate exercises? What exercises do I use? And if I'm going to do dynamic effort, what percentages am I using? And how am I doing bands, chains, et cetera, blah, it's just, there's a lot of programming to it. And sometimes I like the KISS method where it's like, keep it simple, stupid, it's just make it as simple as I can make it, because I'm so busy with so many other things in my life that I like that. Actually, one I would actually recommend to listeners for strength training is Windler's 531. And I actually bought 531 Forever, I think was the name of the book. It's black and gold cover. It has a ton of different templates in it. And the 531 method is basically based on starting out with a light weight off the percentage, 90% of your actual 1 rep max, and then percentages there. And actually that works really well for me, because that's sort of the same thing. It was four core basic lifts. It told you what the percentages were. You just had to do the math really quick, and you went in, you lifted them, and you walked out, you were done, and it didn't take long. And actually I used that during the pandemic for months, and it worked really well. I actually put on body weight. I got stronger. Hold up, my dog is yelling at me to let him out. Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
All right.
This is like his that's his podcast tradition. He does it almost every single episode. But no, I was saying that it actually was good just to have it all written out for me. It basically in a template, and I just went and followed it, and I liked it. And but the only drawback to it is what would I call it? It's the same thing every time. There's like there's no variety. Unless I guess you could create variety. I guess you could put your own variety into it, just choose your own exercises, but it's the same thing. But then again, there's something to be said for that. Again, keep it simple. What's the difference? But I think I will actually check out that program. I'm gonna check out.
I think Joe's or their grappling power program is based on a bench, squat, and then a deadlift. So meat and potatoes, man, basic stuff. And there's a lot of accessory exercises, supplementary work. There's different, percentages and everything's in there. It's great. It was easy to follow. It was good. You can keep it under like 40 minutes, 45. I think pretty much under an hour you could, depending on how much rest time you took. But
how many days a week did it?
I think it was 3. It was 3 days a week. Yeah, it was 3 days a week. I think you had a squat day, a bench day, and then a deadlift day, and the kind of exercise built around that.
Okay, so it's basically pretty much a basic powerlifting program to a degree.
There's some good. It was great. There's some variety in there, but you've got your basic meat and potatoes. You got your basic lifts that are important that you kind of work around. Those are kind of the main. Those are the emphasis of those days.
Yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a therapist question.
All right, cool.
So what's the most common jiu-jitsu related injury that you've seen? And what areas of the body seem to take the most abuse? And what can we do to minimize the trauma to keep us on the mats longer?
Well, so the injuries, it just depends.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on the type of jiu-jitsu you play.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the rule sets. It depends on, I think there's a lot of variety. I mean, you're looking at a lot of shoulders, elbows, of course,
Mm-hmm.
knees. Now with the leg lock game, a lot of knee injuries, ankle injuries, things like that. Those are the common things. I mean, you will see some neck issues. It just depends. Like I was looking at the UFC Performance Institute.
Mm-hmm.
There was this cross-sectional analysis they released, which is basically all their MMA, like for like the past 4 years, a bunch of their MMA injuries,
Mm-hmm.
and they showed the injuries related to grappling,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a lot of it was neck, and then I believe knee,
Mm-hmm.
and then shoulder, kind of around there. But those are the kind of the big hitters. I think you'll see
Mm-hmm.
some low back. A lot of it depends on what style of game you play, you know, where you end up. If you're someone that plays off their back a lot and you may be getting stacked or you're inverting,
Mm-hmm.
you might have some low back, some neck issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're play a top game, you know, it just really depends. But, you know, definitely shoulders and elbows, you know, with all the arm locks and submissions there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it just depends. Now, as far as there's so many factors into injury prevention or injury reduction. A lot of it is you'll see that there's not a connection between the mind and the body.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is you may start jujitsu and you're into it and like this is just what you want to do. And then you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And you just go every day, twice a day, because you're so enthralled in it. But then your body breaks down and you get injured. And that's how you see it. People get so addicted to it. So a lot of it is about listening to your body and keeping, keeping the intensity, modifying the intensity that you train at. Maybe you're older, so maybe you can't go really hard every day. Just listening to your body. Some days you're going to feel better. Some days you won't. I definitely encourage people a solid warm up. Don't skimp on the warm up.
Right.
Really, really important. Simple things are listening to your body, listen to how the intensity. You don't have to go hard every single time you train. And you know, the frequency of your training again as well. And then don't skimp on a warm up. I mean, we could spend a whole probably 3 podcasts talking about all these things, but it's different for everybody. And, you know, if you feel like your body's a little bit broken down, take it easier. You know, don't train as hard. You may still drill, but you may lighten up on the rolling, but, warm up adequately. You know, there's other things outside the gym, getting enough sleep, enough water. Are you eating okay? Are you getting proper rest? Or you're running yourself down in many different ways, because that's gonna show its way into jiu-jitsu as well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a unique situation. Some people that are more used to, you know, athletics and being more physically active, they come into jiu-jitsu. I think their body's gonna assimilate a little more easily versus somebody that's been sitting on the couch and they just are really into jiu-jitsu and they come in and get injured. So that frequency is good. And then if you're someone that is pretty well seasoned, rotate the tires. And what I mean by that is, you know, you're going to play from the bottom for a while. Okay, let's go and work on our top game. Let's go work on staying on top, working from here. So don't just go into the same thing. I'm going to go into bottom half with the underhook on one side and just keep wrenching your arm and things like that. It's okay. So if you really want to work bottom half, we'll work the left side and also work the right side. Right. Try to get to the other side. And that's going to really help your game too, because some people are very dominant to one side. So if you can establish 2 ways of passing or 2 ways of sweeping, you're going to really find that you have a lot more success.
Right. I think a lot of people do that too. A lot of people really focus on one side when they grapple.
Absolutely.
I know I do that. I know if it's stop and now and think about it. I'm like, yeah.
We all do. So switch to the other side and play from there and see how it works.
Yeah. It'll feel weird at first, but
it will. You'll feel like you're backwards.
Right.
but you may find that one of your training partners is really good defending from one side and you take them to the other side and they don't know what the heck to do.
Right.
sweeping them.
Right.
Like what?
Right. Yeah,
So
that's a good
that
point.
it's both ways,
Yeah.
defense and offense.
Nice. So can you find a lot of the details of what you just stated in your Grappling-RX series?
So that was kind of made in like I had a lot of people reach out, you know, with injuries and just they know my background in physical therapy, my background in jiu-jitsu. I'd work with people from the gym and people reach out and I'm like, well, maybe I can create something that people can, what I would give individuals that would see me in person, something I could give them that would give them some insight that would get them, first of all, get their motion back, get them confident in their movements again, start building that strength and resiliency, and also an avenue back to jiu-jitsu. I try to really focus on ways that we can tailor the techniques to help the transition to make it more easy to get back to the mats. Because a lot of the issues you'll see is somebody is like, oh, I'm recovered from my injury. And they go back to training 100% and their body just can't handle and they get injured again.
Right.
The one thing I'll tell people, the number one predictor of injury is previous injury.
Yes.
That's it. Okay. So you have to be really intelligent in your return to training because there's so much. I talked about that mind body connection. You're so excited to be back on the mats and you're telling your body to do this thing and your body's like, nope. Or it's not firing in time. It's not moving like you expect it to. That takes time. You got to kind of create those grooves again. So I think that's really important to be mindful in your return back to training. That's a big disconnect in the physical therapy field because if somebody comes in for a rotator cuff and they just go, okay, you're released from therapy after a certain amount of time. Well, they're going to do normal daily things. They're not going to get their shoulder ripped on. So we got to make sure that you are able to have the capacity to have somebody put some pressure onto your shoulder. And also, you know, you have that resiliency and that strength and your body's kind of aware of that. So that's a big thing, especially with newer belts. You see them get injured, they get discouraged, they finally come back and they get injured again and they never come back after that. So if you can really make that transition safe and smart, that's a big thing. That's a big thing.
Yeah, I think that's something I know you mentioned on your podcast one time is that, you know, people go, they get injured and then they get healed up and then their doctor who really doesn't have any background on what they're doing says, oh yeah, you're good to go do whatever you want. And then they go back and they get snapped up again. So I think that that's a really important point that you should look for somebody who knows what you're doing or has a good idea of what you're doing. And you can get a better opinion about when you can actually go back or things you can do to actually help you go back. In a safer manner.
Or they tell you not to go back. Like, well, why are you doing that? They have no understanding of what the sport or the martial art, whatever you want to call it, whatever it means to you, the impact it has physically, emotionally, you know, people they don't get that because they don't do it. So there's a disconnect there. And my goal is never to tell somebody not to train.
Right.
Try to work around as much as we can modify it. We'll try to do it until, you know, if it's just unsafe for you, obviously, then we have to kind of maybe take time off, things like that. But the Grappling-RX series was just really just my way of just trying to help jiu-jitsu athletes, give them a little bit of knowledge about their care and how they can get back. And there's a warm-up series that I pretty brief, which are like techniques that I actually use and I implement and the things that I show in the products are things that I've actually done and used for myself and others. And it's just my way to try to help people stay healthy and on the mats. That's really the goal.
What's been your worst jiu-jitsu injury?
Fractured my radius.
Nice.
That's right. So I fractured my arm. So I was just playing around. It was a buddy of mine that we trained for a long time together. He would be sporadic coming in and out. And he was in and he hadn't been training a little bit. So I was kind of having my way with him. We're both purple belts at the time. And I was playing around with him and I kind of stood up and he got a cross collar grip and he just yanked really hard. And just the way my hand landed, I heard two pops and I knew. I was like, oh shit, that's it. So I got x-rayed and I had a fracture and I just kind of had to take time off and get back to it. And I trained a lot one-handed once everything was kind of healed. You know, it's funny because when you have a knowledge of what's going on as a physical therapist, you know what your body's going through. and then you're like, you know what you need to do, and you kind of know, okay, I can't do this thing with my arm. I have to learn. So I would adjust my own therapy and try different things, but that was probably the longest I was out. You'll have some neck issues that can keep you out for a little bit, like some muscular. It's more muscular than anything. I've had a little nagging rib injury, and ribs are very.
There you go. Sorry.
Yep.
Ribs. You said ribs are very.
Yeah, I've had like a nagging rib injury. Ribs are very frustrating, and they can take a while. And the main thing for people like, how can I recover more quickly? The key is don't re-injure yourself.
Right.
Don't go back too soon and get it, re-injured, because you're just restarting that process. So if you feel better, start to go slow and figure out what techniques you can and can't do. And then there's some really great mobility exercises. I actually have a video that on my YouTube channel that has some just basic like mobility techniques that you can work on. Any kind of pain-free mobility and movement. It's going to help, with blood flow, and it's going to also help with just keeping your body moving nicely. And, but again, try to avoid re-injuring the ribs. That's a big thing. If people always ask, well, can I take like chondroitin and all this stuff? None of that stuff's really, the research isn't great. What you have to do is maintain mobility in a pain-free range and come back safely to where you don't re-injure. That's really the key. Yeah.
It's funny with the arm though, because I almost did that. My first day back from the pandemic, my first night I was rolling with a friend of mine, and my arm got caught like that underneath the mat, and it started going forward, and I had to tap. I'm like, stop, because I just to snap my arm, and so I remember that. I was like, I remember thinking, see, first roll back year, I waited a year, first roll back, almost got my arm broken, and so
your body doesn't know. Your body doesn't know where to put, where do I put my arms? Like you forget, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you'll instinctively put your arms in positions that they'll be safe in, or will be less likely to roll over them in a certain way or land on them awkwardly.
Right. And we both had that. What was the thing with the finger?
Yeah, mallet finger.
Mallet finger. We both had that. How did you get yours?
I was actually training for a tournament. It's always happens to me before a tournament. I was training for a tournament, feeling good. I came up. I had a sweep, and my finger got caught on the mat, and it just popped. And it didn't hurt at all. I just felt like a little heat. Looked down, my finger's dangling. I'm like, shit. And I was, I was really pissed. And everybody's like, dude, it's just your finger. I was like, this is one of those stupid injuries where I have to brace it and put it in a position where it's going to heal. It's not like, I tore a ligament on the side of my finger.
Right.
And I was able to tape it up and continue training.
Right.
No problem. I actually did it in a tournament going for a choke, and it popped, and I had to tape it up. It was fine. That's not one of those injuries that requires the finger to stay still. You can you can still move it, within reason. But this, when you're the mallet finger, it's like basically a pulley system. You've ruptured that pulley. And so you have to straighten it and keep it straight for depends on, I think I did 8 weeks, maybe longer.
I did more than that because I kept training. Like I splitted mine. Like if I wasn't in training, it was splinted. But if I was in, but I messed up the splint too, because I didn't have it pushed up.
Exactly.
So I had it more straight. And so even to this day,
yours hangs a little bit.
Yeah. See? Yeah.
Mine's pretty straight, but I missed some, I can't bend it as far, but you have to those things are so annoying, and you can't ever let it come out for that time. You have to literally hold it in that position the whole time. So it's a tough one. It's one of those injuries that just takes a while. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
And if you can train, I would train with like my finger, my hand taped, and I would put it in my put it in my gi and my belt, and I would just train one-handed a lot. And I wouldn't use it to grip at all.
I was stupid about it. Well, it's like when I first did it, I had the splint on when I came into train, right?
Yeah.
And the coach said, you can't have that on. My book's really out with it. I was like, all right. So he said, just tape it to the other finger. So I buddy taped it to the other finger, right? Yeah. And so I would go into train every day. I still trained 4 days a week, but at that time I was training 5 or 6 days a week. And I would go into train every day, and I would tape it and cross train, tape it. And I would train, and I'd lift weights like that too. Because when I was buddy taped, I didn't feel it. So I was like, okay, whatever. And then when I wasn't working out, I had it in splint. But again, I didn't splint it right.
You have to splint it the whole time.
I did everything wrong, and it never really healed all the way. And I just finally just let it go. I was like,
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it. It's part of it. It's an annoying one. You have to really be diligent about that one to get it to fix. And I knew it as soon as it happened. I was like, shit, I'm not going to compete. I'm not going to, if I compete, I'm probably going to, my finger's probably never going to be right. So that was just, I knew at that point, I was like, that was frustrating.
See, for you too. I mean, you're a therapist. You need your hands. You know, it's really
I do, but man, my fingers are mangled. I've actually fractured this thumb. I fractured that one. I've probably messed up 4 out of 6 fingers pretty, where I needed some help. So, but it is what it is, man. It's a risk I'm willing to take. I don't mind.
I wasn't jiu-jitsu. It was martial arts, but it wasn't jiu-jitsu. But I actually tore the tendon in my thumb.
Oh yeah.
Here, and I had to get the pin put into the whole thing, and
it's fun.
Cast. It was awesome.
It's fun. Awesome. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's something else I was going to say about that, but I don't remember what it was, so forget it. What type of diet do you follow? Is there anything particular, or are you just like,
just try to eat clean. I eat meat. You know, I like meat. I eat it. I try to eat clean. I try to limit, not great about it. Try to limit dairy. I don't do any soft drinks at all. I drink like this is probably a plug, but I get these at Costco.
Oh yeah.
And they're like 0, or this one has like 9 calories, but like it's just got a little juice in it. But I really I try to limit my sugar really. I'll do carbs and I try to eat clean, I try not to eat out a lot, but I don't really follow a specific diet. And that's another one of those tricky things. Like people are going to try certain diets and there's not a one size fits all. It just depends on what you need. And so I try to eat clean. I try not to limit my sugars and I don't do as much dairy. That's probably about it. That's about the extent of it.
Oh, I remember what I was going to ask you. I was going to tell you how I got my mallet finger. It was actually did it under side control. I was on side control. I had my hand underneath his shoulder. And it was a big guy, and he was trying to bridge. So he was going up to bridge first, and he came down and he smashed down on my hand. And that's how it popped.
Flexion.
Snapped. Yeah, that's it. So the diet sounds pretty basic. I mean, basically, I do. I mean, what about alcohol? I know you guys have talked about bourbon and all that stuff in your podcast.
I'll do a little bourbon here and there, but I've never been a big drinker.
No,
ever. I could take it or leave it. Like I enjoy from around people. I'll do a little bourbon. I used to drink a little more beer and but man, alcohol for me has just never been. It is for some people really huge. For me, it's just never been much of a thing. Like I definitely don't feel, as I've gotten older, I don't feel very good the day after. If I drink like the night before and I go train, I feel horrible. I feel sluggish. I just don't feel like it's, I'll have a little glass of bourbon here and there, but maybe I'll go weeks without drinking anything alcoholic. So just taper it, like, or figure out what works for you.
I drink a little bit. I drink like a little bit. I like IPAs, so I have an IPA in the evening or two, But I'm actually thinking about trying that, just totally cutting it out for a month and just see how it feels as far as like my performance and like when I train and so forth, and see if there actually is a difference. See what that little bit makes a difference.
It's possible.
It probably does. It probably does. Like the whole thing you were saying about like the next morning kind of thing is like I train in the mornings, and sometimes I'll feel like that. I'll get up in the morning. I'm like,
for sure. I feel
like doing this, but I go do it. Got to show up. Are there any foods that you totally avoid?
Well, the main thing is like I try to avoid anything super heavy or spicy before like training or even like the day of training, just because I've had some issues with like some heartburn and it's awful. So I try to like eat fairly bland foods before training, but nothing really that I mean, like I said, like I won't drink soft drinks. That's kind of the main thing. I won't. I try to avoid fried foods. Just because I feel heavy. But that's probably about it. I just try to eat clean.
I try to. I used to weigh 240, and now I weigh 173. So I did it basically when I lost a lot of weight. I did it with the paleo diet, and I really liked it. And it's basically stayed as the core of my diet since. And it's a
good diet. It's solid.
It's awesome. It's a solid diet. I basically got it from the first book I read on it was from Mark Sisson, the Primal Blueprint. That's a pretty good book.
Yeah, it's great.
And I have Rob Wolf's book too. I got to crack that thing open and read it. I'm going to read that too. Rob Wolf also does jiu-jitsu. I'd actually like to talk to him one day too. Have you ever talked to him?
Mm-mm.
No.
Rob Wolf. I don't know if I know that.
He's a big paleo.
I know Mark Sisson, the guy you say.
Yeah.
I know him, but I don't know about
Rob Wolf. I'm saying Rob Wolf.
I don't know if I know that. Maybe I do. I don't know. I have to look him up.
You probably know. Yeah, you look him up. He's actually a brown belt now.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, he's been. Yeah, so I'd actually like to talk to him about his jiu-jitsu experience too, and not so much as the dieting, because you can like read the book, and I don't want to like talk
for sure
about the same thing he talks about every day of his life, right? But
yeah.
But I'd like to get him on to talk about that. You might want to consider that too, just as another guest suggestion. For sure. Because like as a listener, I think it'd be a cool conversation if you guys were able to talk to him. Do you have any like non-martial art interests or talents?
Oh boy, I don't know. I don't know what I mean, I guess I don't know if hosting a podcast is a talent, but like I had to literally figure out and learn, like before they kind of made podcasting so easy. I had to go back and like figure out how to do audio and video and all that stuff. So that was I'd say that's probably a little bit of a talent, but not really. I mean, I learned to juggle. I can juggle a little bit. That's probably it. But I don't know. I'd have to think about that. That's an interesting question.
And then I had this next question is for you because I noticed some of this on your social media. Who's your favorite superhero?
Wolverine.
Awesome.
Easy.
I like him too. Yeah. Actually, I'm a bit of an artist. I like to draw stuff, and actually my favorite subjects are like comic book characters and so forth. So don't be surprised if I ask you for an address later on. You might get a treat.
Right on, man. I'm happy to have it, man.
So my latest, like, here's an example. Like I did this for somebody I'm doing for right now.
Hell yeah, dude. That's the 90s. That's the animated series.
Yeah, the animated series is exactly what it is. So you got, I guess I hit it.
I know what's up,
man. That's what he wanted. So I guess I hit it perfect. So
dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. So you you most likely will be getting it'll take a couple months, but
it's all good, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. I'm not much of an artist. I think that's something that I lack the artistic gene. But that's cool. I always really am inspired and enjoy watching how people create art. I think it's so far out of my realm.
Yeah.
I'm more just like, just more mechanical in nature. Even like physical therapy, there's an artistic side to it for sure. A creativity side. I think mechanically about the human body, and it helps me understand how things work to break things down. So, but yeah, I'm not much of an artist for sure, but that's cool, man. That's a great picture.
That's cool. Thanks. What was your favorite Wolverine movie?
Logan.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The last one was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. That was it.
Yeah. I liked the one before that too. I think it was just the Wolverine, the one in Japan.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's based off of the Frank Miller comic. Yeah, I like that one. It was pretty good.
I would say Logan, and then I really like the Dark Knight series.
Yes, I like the Dark Knight. Yeah, it's actually my favorite. My favorite Batman
absolutely
trilogy. Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the new one though. It looks pretty good.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Who's a Robert
Pattinson? Yeah, I'm looking for. I think with that one, I'm looking forward to the aspect that they're supposed to. It's supposed to be more geared toward the detective aspect of the character.
Okay.
And less physical. So I think that'll be cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm down, man.
All right, cool. So people can contact you at Instagram on Instagram at the Jiu-Jitsu Therapist, or on the web at www.thejujitsutherapist.com.
Yes.
You're on YouTube as the Jiu-Jitsu Therapist, and Facebook as Eugene Tsozik.
Yeah, I also have I think it's Jiu-Jitsu PT on Facebook.
Okay.
So you can do that as well. Cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, Eugene. Again, it was a big thrill for me. Big fan. And if anybody wants a great jiu-jitsu podcast to listen to, it is the Chewjitsu Podcast. I will binge listen to that podcast. It is very good. I mean, really good guests, just good topics, really interesting, entertaining discussions. So if you're looking for another podcast to listen to, by all means, and I'm sure you listen to that one way before you listen to mine. So we'll see.
Man, thank you for having me on, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully we'll cross paths one day, and
absolutely
keep at it, man. Consistency is key. That's it in everything.
Awesome.
If I had to say anything about anything in life, I think it's just being consistent about it is really important. So,
Perfect. Well, I hope you'll come back. We can do another episode later
Absolutely,
on
man.
at some point and go from there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, have a great weekend and take it easy.
Take care,
All right.
man. Thanks for having
Bye.
me.
All right.